So this is the Beyond the Rhine OCS game. I just got the corner of it. Do a wider shot of the full map on 2 tables. This is the setup from the east side. So Germany's here. The Rhine River here and runs all the way around and up to Holland here and over. We have the setup here for the campaign game. Here's the southern part of the map. Front line here. This starts September 5th and runs until April 45. It's 70 turns long, unless it ends early. The Germans win automatically in March if the Allies do not have a headquarters on rail on the B map, this map here, on the other side of the Rhine River in Germany. So they need to get over the Rhine with a headquarters on a railroad by March. The Allies basically win by victory points. Generally when the game ends, or if they really break out and get 5 victory points. So 1 is cutting off the Ruhr, all this area here with the yellow city hexes. Take it or cut it off from trace. They get a victory point for getting units off the northern part of the B map. And then down here on the D map, they get units off here. They also gain another victory point. So 2 for the Ruhr, 1 for the north, 1 for the south. The second point is taking the Saar area right around here. And when they control that, they gain a victory point. And there's one more. Oh, Holland, if they take all of Holland, or the Netherlands, up here, completely control that, they gain a victory point. So the Allies have some options, but that's why this game could end earlier for that. A couple things for starting the game is the front line's a little odd, the ally player, because the British is already taken Antwerp, up here the Commonwealth, and but the Germans are kind of all the way out here, and also kind of up here on the behind the British and Americans. So there's that issue, and then over here the Americans have pushed into the center, but then they also have left all the Germans down here kind of behind their lines, because they're really pushed far out all the way, yeah, to Nancy is under those guys. And Metz is right over there. So they got a little ahead of themselves, but playing this first few turns previously, all these guys will get reinforced, but they're retreating from the south of France, and right behind them is the French and Americans coming up from Operation Dragoon. So either the Germans are kind of cut off because the Americans can swing down behind them. So the German player has to make a decision how he wants to defend this area, which is pull back and defend in one line and give it up with low costs to the Americans. And then the other problem for the German player is all these units are stuck, and the only way out is over this ferry and along the Scheldt estuary, which they need to hold to keep Antwerp from becoming a port for supply, because that's the big problem for the Allies. And so that's how long they want to hold that, but knowing that the Commonwealth player will want to open that Antwerp as quickly as possible, they'll either try to cut off the peninsula there and try to open that up as quick as possible, and then but also push east to keep the German off balance. But the other problem is later in a few turns, the black dashed lines, there's one here and one further down here. These are basically breaks up the Allied front into 3 zones. And this is the broad front problem that they have. So supply is divvied up between them, so it's gonna kind of slow things down. Unlike other OCS games, you can pump all your supply where you want it. This one, the Allied players hampered on what frontage they will be working on. So the first front up here, the northern kind of, it's got the main Commonwealth Montes area with the little Americans covering a bit of that. And then we have an exclusive kind of center, mostly American, and then down south would probably be the French and American forces. And the Allied player needs to keep each supply between the two separate. So it's a bit of a headache a little bit for the player to keep all that straight. Germans do not have that problem, and so they'll can do their defense a little bit more coordinated, but right off the bat they have lost all of that. They have an emergency pool down there, and then they're already setting up for the basically the Battle of the Bulge operation, Vok on the Rhine, set up, and that will happen between, they have a choice anytime between November and December to set that off. And later means more units and set up for it and supply. Earlier you get a bigger surprise but less supply and units. So the German player will have to already be thinking of that as he's setting up defense and retreating and trying to hold his line as the Allies attack. But the kind of pre-set up the September units for the month. This is all that's coming on board, and reinforcements from the 5th to the 29th of September. So quite a lot is coming on board for the Allies to push ahead, but also the Germans are bringing in quite a bit too. And they also have a very small air force, even though there's tons and tons of airfields all over this map, all over the place. The Air Force, on the other hand, is reduced and small, but they have jets in Eindhoven, but the Allied player has quite a bit of Air Force here, doing interdiction, setting up for the airborne groups, and then the Normandy airfields. So, and we'll see how far this campaign goes. And onward. So after the first turn here of Beyond the Rhine, things of note, not much per se, other than the Germans are on the southern part of the map here, trying to getting reinforcements that are coming this way, but the Americans and the French are going to be coming here, which is basically behind the German units. So they're trying to shift, possibly having a line along the railroad here to defend against that because the best they can. Americans actually took that Clermont railroad line, so these hub there, push back the units there, pushing forward here, but I've noticed on the first turn here, the being not knowledgeable of how things work with the setup and maximizing everything, is that there's not quite a bit of supply, which also didn't help the roll for the Allies when they're rushing out here on the board. And making what tax you could do, but since you're going to burn a lot of supply moving all these mech units for movement, so the Germans got a nice line here, just kind of tweaking the defensive line here, but as the Germans notice that the Allies don't have a lot of combat power with supply, so they can set up a defense. They pulled units up along this line here around the Maginot Line, kind of getting that a little bit more straightened out. The Americans tried to attack Sedan and rolled terrible. They, the infantry division there, the 4th, attacked the alert unit there, and they got their surprise and basically forced the full division to retreat. Then the Ardennes here is pretty Spartan of stuff, but good blocking forces here for the Germans. The Allies don't really have anything here. They're also very close on their very far away from headquarters, tossing supply. Most of the supply was way back here. There's actually, headquarters there. So it's a bit of a gap there. They kind of pierced the line here with some overruns, forcing the Germans to pull up stuff. But it's a blocking force, kind of retreating back to Liège here, because this is really open. This is all open here. If the Allies start spreading out, this is just this point of defense is going to fall. But Germans are trying to hold that so they can get guys along the Albert Canal to slow the advance and try to keep Antwerp from opening up. The interesting thing here up on the top along the coast, there's quite a bit of force entered for the Germans through here. So getting those units up and over the ferry and then over along the Albert Canal would be nice. But also with British Commonwealth units here don't have a lot of combat power, and to break through these units, so, and supply, that was problematic. But the Commonwealth units moved up here, also tried to attack the town there. The 8th Armored Brigade failed, or die rolling. But the good note was the German Air Force was completely suppressed except for the Messerschmitt 262s. So the Germans have to waste supply re-upping their air if they want to. And well, on to September 8th. Yeah, September 8th is the next turn. 44. And hopefully the broad front rule will come in, and so it's going to slow the supply axis, but hopefully the Allies can start rolling better on the supply, even though it's going to be spread evenly through the board. So onward to the next turn. So this is the end of the second turn. So of note is this area here. So it's trying to set up a defense with all the hedgehogs and behind the canals. I was trying to set up the line along this river here a little bit to delay, but the Canadians and the Poles came in right above a few of the German units that were south of them. So they kind of got a few overruns and cut off a few guys, but only one unit is out of supply, survived attrition roll. But everybody else pulled out that wasn't killed. Germans pulling out there. Oh, DG has to go. But getting the defenses on the Albert Canal set up, but the British dealing with the supply issue. Being the first time you play this, it kind of gets wonky a little bit. And also if you roll poorly. But I think not this turn, but next turn is the broad front. But trying to defend here for the Germans, trying to push along there, because it's pretty open here. So Germans are lost like basically this big gap here, just trying to delay as everybody pulls up along the river and then along Liège there and probably the Meuse River here. Try to delay. The Ardennes here has got pretty much nobody covering. The Americans are just slowly pushing ahead. Kind of got the Germans trying to defend up here, even though that the Americans have bulged in here, but just a way of delay, because the supply, the Americans haven't rolled well. They've been rolling slow, so that only a few attacks happened up here. And actually we were able to take Sedan, because this time the Germans didn't get their supply roll for us. Do a little alert unit, kind of building up there, holding here. Then another scratcher problem when you first start for the Germans is what to do down here on the southern edge, because you pull up here, having along the river, but there's a big gap here, and then the river here at Belfort kind of helps the defense, but the French and the Americans are going to be coming in this area and through here and up. So Germans have to play it coy up here, how long they want to keep guys up there and then back out, and how well the Americans may want to pincer push through the gap here and up, so you just leave these guys there and force the Germans to pull them out or let them die, and because you got guys here, but they gotta get through. This terrain is a little wonky, and then pulling up through along this railroad line for supply. Might change all that, but the Germans are getting a line here, probably a good line along the river there, and all this rough terrain. So it's still September, so we'll see how things go, and onward to turn 3. So this is the end of September 12th, the third turn. The status here, let's go start up here in northern France. So the British are pulling up, did a few attacks here, pushed them back over the canal, but I've noticed, as this being the first time dealing with some of these problems, armor units in here that are going to have a difficult time getting over minor and major canals, and then the polar terrain is prevalent throughout here, and I'm gonna have to wait for some infantry units to help crack that hedgehog ring, and British kind of push forward, but without supply for attacking. Moving, I can burn. They moved up, forcing the Germans to just basically pull out, because the Americans did a kind of surround some units there, and they decided with the reinforcements to get that line kind of full on the Albert Canal, kind of attack for the Commonwealth, and the Americans in this area were a bit slow. But this turn had some major issues of attacks for the Americans. They lost 3 units and a full 2-stepper, because the Germans got their surprise rolls. But also I haven't said anything about the 3 turns of the basically the events, campaign events. So on the 5th of September we had some of the fighters were pulled off and went into the Luftwaffe Reichsbogs. And then on September 8th, there was a German fuel shortage. It's not too bad for the Germans on that turn, being early. But September 12th, this one past turn, the weather actually cooperated and they got clear weather so they could do hip shoots. But all the air, most of it was pulled off for V1 attacks. So a lot of the units that I did attacking with, I didn't DG with the air, and the artillery was kind of spaced out. But the Germans got their surprise rolls on all these attacks and did some damage to the Americans. Up here on this end, not a lot of activity. Germans decided to pull back a little bit along the edge of the Maginot Line there. Kind of all quiet there. Just moving units around, try to attack up here. Went nowhere, especially on that hedgehog. And this unit here. But down here with the French was a few attacks, crossed rivers, took some damage. The Americans took out a headquarters and another unit, but the Germans filled in the line because the Americans had to retreat back because the Germans getting their surprise rolls and doing some major damage. And then on to the next turn.